like me, Kenny lives in the country, and internet sometimes is hard to come by. So hopefully the internet cooperates, and we can get through this without much bother. But before we get going, I want to remind everybody, if you look in the description of the video, you'll see my website, jasonreynoldsproaudio.com. You can opt in for free to receive emails. I send weekly emails letting you know who the guests on the program is going to be. And also, if you're looking for audio training, or if you know somebody who is in the audio field and want to kind of take it to the next level, check out my Patreon site, patreon.com/JasonReynoldsProAudio, where you can find our different levels of subscription for training there. And yeah, as we go through today, feel free to drop questions in the chat. I do have a monitor somewhere over here that I'm looking at, and I'll try to get to as many questions as we can. But without further ado, let's get into it. Kenny, how you doing, man?
Oh, just trying to survive like everyone else.
Yeah,
Weird times.
I'm learning how to be a broadcaster and a video guy. It's kind of
Hey,
crazy.
it's all the same. It's just wavelengths, right?
Right,
Just higher wavelengths.
Exactly. I taught myself how to use Final Cut. I actually don't think the quality was that great of the video I edited, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if Digico kicks it back and says, this is horrible, get a real video guy. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, man. But thanks for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who's watching who you are, what you do, and who you've worked with, who you work for right now.
Yeah, my name's Kenny Kaiser. I based out of the Bay Area for a long time. Just actually moved out towards the Sacramento area in California about 3 or 4 years ago. Just system guy, mixing guy. I worked for a bunch of PA companies in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Started working for some touring companies down in LA. Started out as a system tech, PA tech grunt, just like everyone else. And then progressed my way up. Just right place, right time. Started mixing the Killers probably about 6 or 7 years ago.
Nice.
And then since then, I've been out with Bush. I've been out with Sammy Hagar last 2 years. Been awesome. And then before that, was out with like Selena Gomez, Train as a system tech. Was out with Foo Fighters as a crew chief, audio crew chief, monitor tech.
Cool.
And just in a grunt. So
yeah, man. So what was your first sort of introduction into music? If you can take me all the way back as far as you can remember, did you always know that you wanted to do something in music? Do you play? Are you a musician as well?
Yeah, so like basically in high school, I was in jazz band and marching band and all that stuff, played guitar, played bass guitar, and then in high school I started playing in like the jazz band, and our music teacher was actually had a whole ADAT record setup.
Oh, nice.
He was super, yeah, so he had 2 ADATs strung together so we can do like 16 channels on the little VHS cassette plates and stuff like that. So my little ska punk bands, like after school, we go record and do all that stuff, and then progressed into me like just wanting to tour and do albums. So I was fortunate enough to have some recording studios near us where I live in the Bay Area. There's one called The Annex, and then there was another one called Hyde Street Studios, which actually produced like a bunch of Chris Isaak stuff. Legendary nice. Bay Area, San Francisco recording studio. Interned there. So originally I started out in the studio, and then Pro Tools happened.
Right.
So then I started working for like a PA company. But then high school ended, went off to college, dropped out of college. My band got signed, and we toured Band's Warped Tour and like MySpace and Monster stuff, all that weird, stupid festival stuff. And then when we weren't touring, I was back in the clubs, working at Slim's, which just closed, Bottom of the Hill, Warfield in San Francisco.
Right.
Just progressed from there. So I always played, still play when I can, and then just progress from there.
What instrument do you play?
Bass guitar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Nice. But yeah, I can dabble in anything.
Yeah. So in the early days of like learning, because a big part of what we do on Learn from the Pros is I want to encourage people that it's more so about the mindset and approach than it is about the tools, because we all use different tools. but we the goal is to accomplish the same thing, right? So
Yes.
obviously you learned back in the analog days, because you referenced when Pro Tools happened. So what was it's a two-part question. Take me through the approach in the early days of wanting to learn, and what was your approach to learning, and then how was that transition now from analog into now a digital world?
I think I wanted to learn everything. Everyone can push faders, right? And everyone can tell somebody that you're like, especially in the studio session, you know what? That's the wrong chord. You should try doing this, or maybe you should try this fill and all that
Right.
stuff, and then plug it into some $2,000 compressor and preamp and call it a day. But
Right.
I wanted to learn, how do you cut tape?
Right.
How do you align the tape heads, and then progress into the live stuff. Like how should we set up the speakers? How is the crossover set up? How are these wired? What kind of amplifier it's using? So I think like a lot of people come and ask me a lot of the times, like, how did you start doing, like, what should I do? And I think you should just learn from the bottom, like learn a schematic, learn how to solder. Like I took up soldering really well and made my own little pedals and patch bays and all this other stuff. So I think, if you take it from learning from the ground up, it's probably better than just to sit there and like, oh, I'm a fader pusher.
Right.
I'm a knob tweaker.
Right.
So
and
you have a greater understanding of how to actually accomplish something that way. Like, so
right.
I have a constant joke. You can do it this way, like just up and down, straight line, or you can do it this way.
Right.
Right. Which one's easier? So.
Right, absolutely, and I find when you meet a lot of younger engineers, and I'm by no means old, but I have been in the industry for 16 years, working in the industry for 16 years, and I also grew up in the analog time. I grew up learning on my first console was an Allen and Heath ML4000.
That's funny.
Yeah, in church, you know what I mean? So I'm like, you find that nowadays a lot of guys are very visual with their approach to audio. It's about what the EQ looks like and not necessarily what it sounds like, because back when we were mixing on analog desks, you can see what the EQ was doing. You had to listen. So when you turn the knob, you had to listen to what it was actually doing. And I find nowadays people say, "Oh man, that EQ looks messed up," but I'm always like, "Yeah, but what does it sound like?"
Yep. My favorite quote, Nobby is the guy who mixes Tool.
Yeah.
Went up to his 4K and I just looked at some of the stuff, like, what the hell? And he was coming out of the bus and just yelled at me across the arena and just goes, "It's supposed to sound good, mate, not look good."
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Talk a little bit about, because we've had some interesting conversations, not a whole ton. We see each other at NAM every year for like a split second because it's so busy. Yeah. So, but talk a little bit. We've had some interesting conversations about the source, and a lot of the top engineers that have been on this program have spent a lot of time talking about the source. I am huge on the source. I'm there's a reason why I use DPA microphones, because the source matters, right? So talk a little bit about, for some of the younger engineers watching, your approaches where as it relates to the source and capturing that source effectively, and why it makes your mixes so much better.
I think when you get that first step into the industry, when you're mixing a band and they give you a budget, right? Yeah, whatever you think is going to sound good, you start being like, oh yeah, I finally get to use these toys, right? So you're just like, oh, I'm going to use Neumanns on everything. I want ribbon mics on the stage. We're going to use these cables. I'm going to use this console and stuff like that. And they lose the whole grasp, and then they start building a mix off these $20,000 microphones that they're able to purchase. And you just listen to it. And it's like, I don't know. I don't get it. What's going on? Right. Or they read some post on Gear Sluts about, this compression, side chaining it, and dual compression, and they just go for it instead of just listening to the stuff first. Right. Sit down with the band before you even open the console up. Sit down and listen to the songs. Yeah. Right. Listen what they want to do, and then figure out how the actual stage setup is, right? Because a ribbon mic's not going to do like Killers. It's 116 dB on the deck.
Right.
Like
right.
Marty Beath, our monitor engineer, is a genius.
Right.
He's so good at controlling and propagating. It just sounds, it's loud and intense. So obviously, ribbon mics aren't going to do me any good.
Right.
I'm not going to have, so the way we approached it with the Source was, all right, let's just get some mics that do really good rejection off of it.
Right.
Right. So that's first step for us. We basically try to clean up the stage, because if the stage is clean and the monitors are clean, then it's going to help me out in front of house.
Right.
Just like if you have a well-tuned PA and a well-tuned spec PA, it's going to help out the stage. So it's a very the reciprocity between the monitor engineer and the front of house engineer to be good, have a good conversation. So that's step one. Step two is to actually have a conversation with the band rather than beating your head back and forth. Like, I can't get it to sound right. It just sounds like crap. I mean, nowadays we're fortunate laptops are pretty cheap, and there's some great programs over there the multi-track. Track it. Hey, Ted, guitar player, or whoever, Bob, Jake, Joanne.
Right.
Come listen. Is that how you want it to sound?
Right.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, come out to front of house. Come listen to this. This is how you want to sound. Have a conversation with the person, and then if you fix it at the source, your job at the ass end with the left-right outputs is going to be a lot easier.
Right.
A lot easier.
Right. And there's a lot of gems there for younger guys, because sometimes I watch guys come into a new situation, and I was talking to one of my mentorship students in his mentorship call, and we were talking about just kind of approach, and his main thing is, well, technically I'm good. I know how to mix. I know how to do that stuff. I know how to mix airs. I know how to mix wedges. But here are some situations that get away from me, and a lot of that has to do with approach and building a rapport with the band. Because at the end of the day, and you've obviously, sometimes a musician hears something naturally off of their amp or their drum kit or something, and it doesn't translate that way when it's coming out the PA, and so adjustments have to be made. But you talked about this collaborative effort between band and engineer or crew, which is really that next step, because I find sometimes when guys just get into it before they tend to understand that kind of collaboration, it just sounds like the house guy laying down a really good mix. It doesn't sound like the touring guy. It doesn't. Exactly. That mix doesn't sound great. It doesn't take that next step, and many people misunderstand that next step actually doesn't have much to do with mics and cables and stuff. It's really you understanding the psychology of the band and the music, and understanding what they're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I'm gonna say I'm old. I'm not that old. I think we're the same age. But I working festivals, right? Like, I still do system teching for festivals and stuff like that. I still like grunt work. It makes me feel human. Going to festivals and having this is going to be so bad. Having a millennial come up to me and just say, instead of introducing their name, they introduce who they work for.
Right.
It's like, no, I want to know who your name is. I want to know who I'm dealing with, right? I want to have a conversation with you, so that way both of us are going to have a good day, right? Don't come up with this attitude. It's like, oh, I work with this person. It's like, no, dude, like, who are you? Like, whatever, right? I don't care. It's funny, like, with everyone in the band and everyone in the crew is off for the same goal, and that is to make the show incredible, sound great, look great, and be great, right? So the band wants to be good. They're under the pressure. I mean, everyone's looking at the band. They're not looking at the front of house guy. Right. They only look at the front of house guy when the power goes out. They can't hear the vocal.
Right. Like, exactly. Exactly.
So, I mean, obviously the drummer wants the drums to sound good. The guitar player wants to have the guitar sound good. Have a conversation with the guy. What are you looking for? Like, I know we were supposed to be in production rehearsals right now, or just finish up, and you actually introduced me to the guy over at DPA, because for a long time we've been using Telefunken and Heil mics. They're great, love them, but we just wanted to try something different. And Ronnie has a little hookup with the Earthwork guys. And I was like, hey, dude, we got time. Why don't you show up an hour early with us, and we'll swap out mics. We'll track mics, right? See how they go. Do 3 sections. You just play a simple beat, try out the mics, and see which ones go. They're your drums. your song, it's your baby. I'm just here to try to make it sound as good as it can.
Right.
Right. And even with like, I had, I've had a lot of conversations where like I feel that bands are surrounded by a lot of yes men or yes
Absolutely.
women.
Yeah.
Right? They got management. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, sure. Whatever you need. Oh, you want that flight? Oh, you want that hotel room? Yeah, we can do that. No problem.
Right.
I think it's very refreshing for them to not all the time, but sometimes put them in check.
Right. 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 For sure. For sure.
You're right. Like with the Sammy Hagar tour that I did, which was awesome. It was like a dream come true. Like it's like, holy crap, it's Sammy Hagar. It's Michael Anthony, Jason Bonham on drums. This is going to be a cakewalk. You showing up, it's like, damn, it's loud on stage.
Right.
It's crazy loud on stage. Hey, Michael, do you really need to turn on all those 810s, all 12 of them? Do they really need to be on right now? Well, that's how I get my tone. You got wedges in front of you. We just turn them some down because it's making my job really hard. What do you mean? Come out here for 5 minutes. Come listen to this. You know, have your bass tech play with the band, and then you're like, oh yeah. Then he gets it. Oh yeah, no, whatever you need, man. I get it. I want it to sound good.
Right.
So.
Right. And how much does it help you? Because I've talked a little bit about, I spent, so Larnell Lewis, who is the drummer for Snarky Puppy, he's based here in Toronto. He's from Toronto. He played at my wedding, but we were working on a live recording together, and he took like, I think it was something like 2 hours to tune his drum kit for this recording. So afterwards, I just kind of went over to him and was like, after we were done sound check, I was like, Larnell, you mind teaching me a bit about tuning? And I kind of sat with him for an hour and a half, I think it was, and he taught me pretty much everything he knew. He gave me a crash course in tuning, and so now I think that's made people hit me up they see videos on Instagram, right? And they go, man, how do you get your toms to sound that way? I go, tune them, and I put a DPA 4099 on, and put a high pass filter, and it's great. They're like, no, you're just not telling me the secret. But
that's the secret.
But that is the
Learn
secret. Yeah. So talk a little bit about you know about bass. You play bass, obviously, but even knowing about other instruments and how they traject sound and stuff. How much does that play into you as a front of house guy? And I know obviously at the level of like the Killers and Sammy Hagar, they've got techs and drum techs who do a fantastic job of tuning and stuff, but there's still some amount of input that you have as a front of house guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, a guy I used to work with, Greg Price, amazing dude. He's been mixing Ozzy Osbourne for like the last 30 years. Great dude. I asked him years ago when I first started, we were working on a gig, some festival, and he was mixing. I was like, so I just got to ask, because I wasn't mixing Killers yet. I was still a system tech. Right. I was like, is your job easier? Because now you're at that point where you have, the really good techs, the really good instruments, and all that stuff. Your job has to be easier. It's not like you're working in a club anymore where you got some guys rolling in with some crate amplifier, blessed to the 12, and just blowing out your ear. Like everyone has to go. He says, yes, my job is easier, but the expectation is exponential.
Right.
Like the expectation is huge.
Right.
So I think, I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost the train of thought. But I think, yeah, yes, it's easier. But like what you said earlier, like the more you expose yourself to everyone's job, the better off we're going to be. I totally lost train of thought.
Yeah, all good.
On a tangent. I do this. Sorry.
Yeah, man, all good. But so I lost my train of thought too. It's funny. Let's bring it back. Bring it back. All right, I get it. I know where I'm going now. So talk to me a little bit about the relationship between, and you have a good angle on this because you started as a system tech. I mean, I've done some system tech stuff, just freelancing for production companies, but you can't really call it system tech. Like it's fly to PA for a little festival here locally, and then I kind of made the jump into touring. So I never really did major touring system tech stuff, but that's something I had to learn as a front of house guy. the importance of the relationship between you as a front of house guy and your system tech, especially when you're walking into festivals or situations where, like, I don't mix bands where we get to tour with PA. So that system tech becomes now my most valuable resource.
He's your mastering engineer. That's what he
Exactly,
is.
exactly. So talk a little bit about, making that transition from system tech to now being the guy standing at the console. What do you look for from your system tech? What are those conversations like? If you can give people some insight into that relationship.
I think, man, he is your wingman. He is your goose to your maverick, right? That guy, he man, it is so crucial to have a good system tech, and it's so
Right,
crucial to have a system tech to actually know what he's doing,
right,
right? It's funny. PAs have now gotten to the point where there's so many tools and so much fluff in them that you can do whatever the hell you want with them, just like mixing consoles.
right,
That people get lost really quick,
right,
right?
right,
So when you're touring with the PA system, obviously you can start using some of those tools and make it your own. But when you go into festivals or venues that have a pre-existing installed PA system that you can't take down or you have to use, that's where that system tech has to shine, because he needs to know what you expect out of the PA system, what kind of curve you want, and everything else, right?
right,
Just coming from a system tech standpoint, I like a flat curve. I like a flat response out
right,
of my PA. So I try to tune it as a flat response, because a flat response is a flat response is a flat response.
right,
Like,
right, right,
if you're going to have more consistency with your mix if you're able to tune a PA system the way you want it and have it consistent. So I actually have traces from every single PA that I take
right,
at the end of the night, start of the night, end of the night. I take traces, snapshot it, and basically say good, bad, good.
right,
Whatever.
right,
Label it however it is. Like J rig, good rig. Here it is. Here's a response that I want.
right,
K1. Here's a response I like out of the K1. Stuff like that. So the system tech, and if you want to be a good mixing engineer, I'd say this to everyone: learn how to fly PA and learn how to tune it.
right,
Like, learn physics. Taking an acoustical course at a community college or something like that, just so you learn acoustics. It's amazing.
right.
Amazing for people. It's an amazing tool.
Right,
So
absolutely. And I mean, obviously, understanding tuning and learning tuning is crucial, especially if you want if you're using a file that you need to translate from PA to PA. I mean, and that's one of the things we are forced in reggae music to become masters of, is because we never have the same PA
yeah.
2 nights in a row. Like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Like, when we run into the same PA back to back, it's like, yo, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This is the world.
That's how
changing.
that whole Sammy Hagar tour. We didn't
Yeah,
carry PA. It was clubs, casinos, and sheds, and stacking
right,
racks. So every
right.
single day was a different thing.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, that's great. It makes your head start working, right?
yeah,
Because you start.
yeah.
I have me and my buddy Jay Rigby, another great system tech, another great front of house guy. We have like a pre-flight checklist that we do every single gig.
Right,
So we go in and we basically just nod up the questions. It's a PA the same height. How are the subs stacked? Are they cardioid? Can we go through the sub lines, make sure they're cardioid, make sure that there's no lines flipped or anything like that?
right,
Because that literally, it's like, that is what is going to make or break your day. It's like, why does the kick drum sound terrible? Well, maybe because
right,
it's your subs are off. But if
right.
you didn't check it, you won't know. You're in the middle of the set, and then you just you're
Exactly,
screwed.
exactly,
So
exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, expand on that a little bit, because I think we all, one of the things is, I was saying to, I was talking to Ricky Cook yesterday on this program, and he's like,
love that guy.
yeah,
Such a good dude.
know Ricky. We all met at the same time
Yeah.
at the Adamson booth a couple of NAMs ago. So I
Yeah.
was interviewing Ricky yesterday, and we were talking about, you create this process, right? And you do it naturally because it's your process. But if you ever want to know if you really know what you're doing, go explain it to somebody else. Go teach it to somebody else. And so they have this philosophy that I found really incredible and eye-opening at Hillsong, which they ask, who are you bringing with you? So on your journey of, okay, so you're learning a new skill, who are you bringing with you? Because if And I find even doing these programs, I tell people all the time, I learn the most because I'm sitting in on them every day and asking these questions. But now that you explain this process, all of us have this process that ultimately allows us to have success, especially on festivals. Somebody asked me if I ever get nervous, and I said the only time nowadays I get nervous is on a festival, because one, changeover time. If that crew doesn't nail that changeover to give me enough time to line check or get through my process, then it's like unmute and this could be a train wreck. But we're you know what I mean. So talk to me a little bit more about that process, that pre-flight checklist.
So it's basically, I mean, a tour when you're touring with your own PA system. I mean, you have like hopefully you got maybe a couple days or a week to deal with it, kind of tune it how you want to, and then do tracks and all that stuff. So like that's fine. But like I said, festivals and like you can kind of see what you're kind of getting into just by walking on the stage. Right. So like I compose it as take pride in your work. So if I walk on stage and I see stage left a complete mess, cables everywhere, just a mound of just extra speaker cable on top of this amp racks or something like that, or even having the amp racks in stage left where you know you're going to have 3 guest consoles. You know, and there's no room. Like, okay, so this is going to be a rough day. Then you walk out and you see the subs and they're just like, you know, they're all like mismatched, not even lined up. You're like, okay, this is going to be rough. So that's checklist A that I'm going to use that day, right? Or if you walk in, like Glastonbury a couple of years ago, you walk in, everything's pristine, clean. We're like, all right, cool. I'm going to use checklist B. My checklist A is basically, all right, go up to them, introduce myself. Ask them a bunch of questions. Yeah, so did you guys go through the PA today? Check all the components? No, we haven't done that. Well, can you just do that while I start loading in? Just make sure we all got it good. Yeah, sure. Great. You got the subs and cardio? Yeah. Which preset you using? Whether it's K1, excuse me, SP28s, or whether it's J, like, you know, J's already cardio, but whatever, like B subs or whatever, whatever manufacturer you're in. Just make sure all the lines are good. How are you running the PA? Are you going analog to the amps? Are you going AES? Running analog, that's big. I mean, like, that's okay. There's going to be maybe some issues, some buzzes, maybe something like that, trying to figure that stuff out. But then after that, you start, once you get, at that point, but hopefully you have your snake, your console tip, and all that stuff. They've gone through all the components and stuff like that. And you can kind of figure out, ask them, all right, where did you time align the subs? Do you have any arcing on the subs? Right? Have you done any arc subs? Go through all that stuff in my head. So that way, before I start taking measurements, I have a good picture of like what this guy or girl has done to the PA. Step through it. B, my checklist B is basically for the really big festivals where, again, like Glastonbury or like Global Citizens in New York or whatever, you know, the big ones where you basically walk in, it's pristine, and it's like, oh, these guys know what they're doing. They've been here for a couple of weeks already. You know, then you start like, all right, and by that time you're walking up to the front of house and they're already checking the components. You're like, okay, today's going to be hopefully a pretty good day. Then you go through it, basically go through there. My biggest thing now is that there's so many options with PAs, whether it's like with CPL or array morphine or all that weird stuff that they got going with the control the low mids on PAs and stuff like that. I ask them if they have any of that on there because honestly, I don't want it. At the time.
That's so true, man. Like we were playing we had 2 nights at Red Rocks back in 2018 with Stephen Marley, and the GSL rig had just come out, and Brown Note was a Brown Note rig. And man, I was monitors, but because I'm more like Veer is just a really good mixer. Like he at the time he didn't get into smart and that kind of stuff. He knew his console, he could lay down a really good mix anywhere, right? So he calls me, he's like, come out to front of house and bring your smart rig. So I'm like, all right, that's weird. It's a weird request because you know you expected it to be, and man, we listened and I was like, something's weird, like. And so I say, you got any array processing on the rig? He's like, yeah, it's all array process. I'm like, can you take that off for a second and just leave it like wide open? Just give me it wide open and phase align the subs, and then let's listen to it again. Man, so much better. I was
Yeah.
like that whole array process, and to be fair, the array processing was in its infant stages. They were still trying to figure it out. I know they had issues when you were dealing with a seated area versus a standing area, and it was just
Yep.
kind of all a mess. So
Yeah.
to be fair,
It's light years ahead now.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the same
absolutely,
thing with me. I've been taking out that Martin MLA rig since it came out.
yeah,
I've been taking that stuff out and still use it. It's a great PA. But again, it's one of those things where it's like I equate it to somebody who's new that just bought like a Wave server or the new like UA Live
right,
server, and they just
right,
I want this, and just
yeah,
stack stuff on top
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
Right? It's like, oh,
yeah.
look what I can do. I can bend sound. It's like, yeah, you can bend sound, but do you want to? Like,
Right, exactly. It's funny because we're definitely gonna get into that. I mean, I see these people post these pictures online of, and you and I have had conversations about this. People post these pictures online where they got like a Waves multi rack with like 7 plugins in one rack, and I'm like, man, if you need 7 plugins to make that thing sound good,
Yeah.
you need to go check something because something's not working the way it's supposed to. If you need all the
Yeah, exactly.
all like
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like I get to if you're using a lake or an outline or whatever you use as your last EQ before it hits the PA.
right,
If you got more than 6 or 7 filters, I'm going to say 7, be like really generous. If you
right,
got more than that, there is an issue with the PA.
right,
Especially
absolutely,
now with PAs, how phase correct they are,
right.
and all the processing that's built into the amplifiers and stuff like that. I mean, this is not 2002.
Right,
Where
exactly.
we're dealing with like still analog crossovers
Right,
at that point still.
right,
XTAs, I think, XTAs started coming out with their own stuff. But if you got more than 6 or 7 filters, there's something wrong, and you need to start over
right,
and figure it out.
right,
And that's when it's just one of those repetition stuff where you just keep on doing it, and just go through your checklist. And then over time and over years, you might add a step inside your checklist just because you
right,
got boned one time.
right, exactly.
Like, oh, I didn't check that, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's
like,
funny.
I remember when
Yep.
I first took over for the Killers, we're doing that big ass festival in Quebec. What is it?
Oshiega.
Yeah, that stage, that crazy cool looking stage.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyways, I mean, we all do it. Brand new console. Oh, I'm gonna try this, and I put something on the left and right, but I only inserted it, dumbass, on the
On the
right
one
side.
side.
So didn't have a sound check. Didn't really check it.
Yeah.
What's going on? Where's my kick drum? Where's my bass? Everything's
Right.
just weird. And then we're just like, it's your system. The guy's like, no, it's not. And the guy was on it. He was basically he had smart traces from my console, from the PA and stuff like that. And he's like, no, there's something going on in your console. Look, here's your left and here's your right. There's a big phase
Right, right,
dip at like
right.
250. Sure enough, it was that insert.
Yeah.
Took it
yeah.
out and it just added like 6 dB immediately.
Oh, wow.
Boom. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's my mix. Oh,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I've had it's so, man. I have a friend of mine, Jeremy Elliott. He at Production Service Industries where I work now. Well, not right now because there's no work happening. But prior to COVID, I'm a senior account rep there, and I do labor coordination and a bunch of stuff. But Jeremy runs our Niagara office, and he says all the time. He said he has a saying that goes, every policy is the result of a bad experience. So as you have bad experiences, you implement policies. I remember doing Kaboo in Cayman, right? And I was mixing Romain Virgo, and he was opening the day, so I didn't get a sound check opening act. I was there with Shaggy, and then his manager asked me to come mix front of house for them. And
Yeah, that's always fun when that happens last
Yeah,
minute.
I
Yeah,
know.
sure, why not? Well, guess what's
So-
going to happen?
I know, right? And so I have a file for the SD7, kind of like a bass mix file, but I didn't check. So the band is playing up on stage because they're sound checking ears, but I can't open the PA yet. And I didn't check with this is where I implemented this policy to check with my system tech where the level's hitting, right? Because he's been there for a few days, so he can say, yeah, you're a bit hot, you know what I mean? Dude, I unmuted that PA, and it's like somebody fired a shotgun right beside my head. It was so loud. I was like, man, I was like, Yeah, that's in my checklist now. It's like
Yeah.
check with the system tech and make sure your left and right's coming out where it's supposed
Yeah.
to be and not
Yeah.
smashing the people's eardrum. Good old monitor guy going to fix mix front of house. Of course, that's what happens, right?
Well, I mean, that's what a monitor guy does. Just makes it louder,
Just
right?
makes it loud. Exactly. So that's funny. Talk to me a little bit about and before I get into console, the reason why I do it in this order for those watching is for me, I'm very big on the source, the front end, and then the end user experience. So and we've talked a lot about that. That once you have a really solid source, you got good microphones going into good preamps, and then you have on the end user side a well-tuned PA, well-balanced PA. Then really the middle is kind of up for debate because at that point, for a lot of us, we use certain consoles because we like the flow. We have a lot of it. I find comes down to workflow because really at a certain level, everything sounds really good. Like if you're on an S6L, well, I'm not gonna go into S6L bash mode on this broadcast, but
not yet.
not yet anyway. But if you're on an S6L, you're on a Digico, you're on an SSL. There's different characteristics to each, but they all sound really good. So if you have a really good front end and then your PA is well tuned and you can get great results, right? And then it's up for discussion what you use in the middle, right? But in terms of PA systems, you talked about the Martin MLA, and we ran into that system up in Michigan somewhere. There's a company up there that has an MLA system, and it was the first
it's
time.
out of Chicago. I forget the name
Yes,
of it.
yeah, and we were like really, really surprised. They were doing. We were with Stephen Marley on a festival for it was blues band, Green Sky or Green Leaf or something like that. Sort of a folk blues festival, and they invited us to come. And I was really, really surprised. And then we met few years ago at NAM. You were doing a press thing for Adamson, and obviously we have mutual friend in Jeremiah. Shout out Jeremiah and the whole team at Adamson. What's kind of your list of PA in terms of order of preference, if you're allowed to?
I mean, I'm allowed because I don't get paid by those guys. So yeah,
perfect.
I mean, all that stuff comes down to taste. I've heard really good mixes on K1. I've heard really good mixes on J, GSL, KSL. I've heard really good mixes on like JBL Vertec.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
Right, I've heard really good stuff on the Addison stuff. This is funny. So I obviously every single time I go into a festival, I like to crack a joke just to see who I'm going with, who I'm working with, stuff like that. And then ask questions and stuff like that. And the first question, one of the questions I always ask about PAs is as a system guy is like, what's your favorite thing about this PA? Right? And half the time, I say more like 80% of the time, with certain boxes, it's it goes up really easily. And I'm just like, that should be like second.
Right.
It should sound good.
Yeah, I know.
Like the first thing, it should sound really good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so that's my whole thing. Like I'm like, especially as a front of house engineer, like I mean, this is gonna be my bitch card. But like I'm not flying it. I just want it to sound good.
Right.
I spec'd it out. That's why the people flying it and make it sound good.
Right.
So the MLA stuff, it's such a good PA. It was way ahead of its time.
Right.
I think. Right. And that's where people at D&B can argue all they want with me, but that's the array processing is a dumbed down version of MLA.
Right.
They don't have the missed drivers and stuff like that with it. The Adamson stuff, the way they tune their front end on their horns and stuff like that, is just punchy. Right. I love it. And it's the first time I heard a 21-inch sub where it was like, oh, it's not laggy.
It's not it's not flabby and just like slow.
Yeah. Right. Brown Note just did a demo of their GSL rig that they did because we were talking about the US run, possibly using that stuff.
Right.
It's phenomenal. Oh, the low end off of that stuff is crazy good.
Yeah, those SL subs are scary, man. They're scary good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. And then even the new Martin, the WPL, I got flown over to the UK to hear that stuff because I never really heard it. I just saw it, never really heard it. I'm still using MLA. And there was a conversation with the stadium stuff we're doing in the UK to possibly use the WPL because it's lighter. And whoa,
Yeah.
it holds up. It sounds good. It sounds really, really good.
Right.
And my whole thing, again, it's a flat PA. Obviously, the longer line of the PA you have, the more low end buildup you have, just because you got all those low end drivers.
Right. For sure.
Right. But I hate the ramp up from 500 and below. I hate that. I feel with the way I mix, it buries a lot of stuff that you want to hear. It buries the toms. It buries the body of the bass guitar. Right. Way I mix, I like to hear definition between bass guitar and kick drum.
Absolutely.
Kick drum 60 hertz subs, but then you have the attack on the 5K, and then you got the attack.
Right.
Bass guitar, I feel like a lot of it's like 1K. You want to get some of that meat, but then also you need a little bit of that low end, just above maybe like 200, something like that, just a little bit. But if you have a big old ramp up in the low mids like that, you're just not going to hear it.
Yeah,
it's not going to punch. It's not going to feel any good.
Right.
So, and it's the way if you listen to so in your minds, everyone listening, after this, think of one of the best shows you ever went to, the best sounding shows. It's like, oh my God, it sounded so good. And I guarantee it's because the drums and the bass were tits good.
Right.
So good. They were mixed really well. There's definition. You can hear all the notes in the bass guitar. It wasn't all muddy and you just felt just like low end fluff. You can actually hear everything.
Right.
And you can hear the kick drum. You can hear the snare drum. You can hear the toms. Then everything else, whatever.
Yeah.
I guarantee that's what it is.
Facts. Right? Facts. I mean, if you look at, and it's funny because I talk a lot about Veer, and when you hear him mix Stephen Marley or the Marley Brothers, right? People automatically tend to think, oh, it's reggae music, so it's gonna be a whole ton of low end, and it's just gonna. No, it's like right there. That definition that you talk about, and in fact, he was the one who taught me when I started to mix more front of house. He said to me, "Listen, get your drums, your bass, and your vocal." And then everything else, you can just like if your drums, your bass, and your vocal are right where they need to be, your vocals right in front of you, you can hear that real good. On top of your drums and bass, he's like the melodic stuff you can just bring in. That's easy. Yep. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, there was I used to work with this guy named Mike Neal. He used to mix Jimi Hendrix back in the day. Like he passed away a couple of years ago. Like legend, right? Like helped John Mayer help develop like the original speakers, stuff like that. Worked with this company called McCune out of San Francisco.
Nice.
And he told me years ago, if you don't have the vocal in the wedges or the PA before the artist gets on stage, you lost.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
Like to this day,
if
like the band shows up and you just like they go up to the mic and go, hey, and they just look around, you lost all confidence in it. But if they go up and that thing's on and they hear themselves, oh, okay, cool, it's gonna be a good day, and your day's gonna be a good day.
Yeah. So. And that's so true, man, because even as a monitor guy, I start with my vocal. Like when I walk on, that's the first thing I do when I walk on any stage anywhere in the world, any changeover, any festival I've done, and thankfully we've had the opportunity to be all over the world. The first thing I ask for is that vocal mic. I'm like, let me ring out my wedges. Let me make sure my wedges and side fill balance is perfect. And usually that's how I know that when I load when the rest of my file comes on, once I set my gains, I'm gonna be fine. If Shaggy's vocal is balanced from the wedge and the side fill is how I know he likes it, I can just basically unmute my file. And we can go because once that's good, I know. So I've actually. It's funny now that you talk through these things, you go, man, this makes a lot of sense. I've been doing but it makes a lot of sense.
It's like I had an ongoing joke that like what I get paid, I'm like a high paid barber.
Yeah.
It's like I haven't got a haircut, but like basically like we're there to make them comfortable.
Right.
Right. And if you don't have the personality or you're not upfront with them and you don't like have that like the bedside tact, like you're gonna lose. And you're going to lose your job at some point. I'm not saying like immediately, but at some point there's going to be, I don't know, like the artist is going to be like, I don't know, it's just a rough day. I don't know, I really know. It's like that's your first if you ever hear that, that's your first inclination of like, okay, I need to check myself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So
And I was explaining to some of our guys with Shaggy because we're at the point now as things grow, which is funny because he's been in the business for 30 years. But as
yeah,
we continue to grow, and now we have two stage techs out. They kind of deal with our stage stuff. I don't necessarily have to. I used to set up keyboards. I used to make sure risers were placed. Now as a PM, I just kind of make sure they're in the right spot. But I got guys who do that. But I explained to them that one of the things that made me so successful as a monitor engineer is my philosophy. I had a mentor of mine teach me very young that the stage was my house, and the artist was a guest in my house. And even though they're the artist who's paying for the house, I live. It's my place, right? So everything. I mean, everything I paid attention to. I for the last 5 years, Shaggy could essentially take the same amount of steps from his mic stand downstage center to his water. Like I literally measured that every show. I made sure when I walked on stage, the first thing I was always looking at is cables. Are they neat? Are there any cables where he could roll his ankle, trip? Where is he walking in? Where is he entering the stage? I check, and I mean, listen, we had stage manager and tour manager who would eventually check all that stuff. But I took that personal. I took that as a personal mission. When I got there, I checked all those things because I knew. And he's a very good example of that. If he comes up and things aren't the way he's used to, it sounds horrible. He's like,
yeah,
it sounds terrible today.
yeah, something's not right. It's just not right. Not into it, and then the crowd gets shit out of a shit show, and then everything else happens. It's a trickle down effect.
Yeah, it absolutely
terrible.
goes downhill. So yeah, definitely for the younger guys watching, that is such gold.
Yeah, and honestly, like the younger guys, like if you're gonna, I mean, obviously there's like the 5 to 10% that like start in the little band, right, and do the clubs and stuff like that. And they make their way up and you stay with them. Cool, great, more power to you. But the majority of you guys and girls are going to start as stage techs,
right?
Like festival tech. Like we countless dudes I brought up and brought on tour, and a couple girls too. Like I saw them work at festivals.
Absolutely.
And saw they kept the stuff clean.
Absolutely.
They were on it. You asked them questions. They were super nice. They never yelled.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. Like you want to be a professional, never yell, never show your emotions.
Yes.
Right. Like if you're going to get angry, just be very calm about it. You know, it's just like yelling gets nowhere.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
So.
Yeah, that's so huge, man. Like it's the same for me. All the guys that I've ended up, and I consider it a blessing to be able to mentor people and put them in positions to succeed. I don't take credit for their success because ultimately guys like Davin, who's one of my moderators, he's now doing monitors for Stephen Marley. I got Jamal, who is head of audio at Soundbox and was about to go out as the system tech for Hillsong Worship on a arena tour, and they were doing Red Rocks and some big venues. These are guys that started with me at a very early stage, and those are the things that you notice about them: their attention to detail, and just their ability to handle pressure, because that's a big part of it. Like especially when you're in a tour bus with the same people for 3 months, you're gonna get angry, you're gonna be pissed off. But how do you handle that, and how is your attitude toxic to the environment? That's the stuff tour managers and artists are looking at.
Yeah, exactly. It's all it. Yeah.
So for sure, right? As we wind down, because we got about 10 more minutes. You're an SSL user. Talk to me about the SSL console. How did that come into play? What were you using before that, and how did that change happen?
Okay, so with the Killer, it's basically the old front of house engineer was going to leave, and there was a couple shows that they wanted me to mix on before he left, like in Japan. So he was on an SD7. So did the SD7, and we were in Asia. Shows that I did, they liked it. They liked what I did. And then so I was like, all right, screw it. We'll just use this for the rest of, we got like 2 or 3 more months of this tour at the end of this run. And then after that, we got a month break. So I can't really switch consoles right now with this input list and everything's there. So we do the rest of the tours, and I would have console failures. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, this is 6 or 7 years ago. They got their stuff together now, but like
Right.
the left side of the bank would just fry with humidity, right? You'd be there with a hair dryer, drying out the fader banks, and I'm sure people have done that before, right? So it got to the point where I had to make a layer that was just blank, because when I would switch layers, it would actually interrupt the audio, and the faders moving around would actually fluctuate the audio input and output of it. So I was like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. Luckily, fortunate for me, I live in the Bay Area, and there's a company out here called High Tech Audio, and Lewis over there only does digital consoles. He rents consoles to Claire, 8th Day, ATK, whoever needs them, he'll rent instant consoles. And he just got one of those SSLs. And I was hearing about it, and it was cool. Because originally I was like, maybe I'll take out a Midas, but then I just got done with Foo Fighters and with Ian, all the headaches he was having with that thing. I was like, I don't want to do this, right? Even if it sounds good, I don't want to have to deal with the explaining to an artist why the show got turned off. Or why they had to end the show early because the console failed, right? So SSL came out. I went to go check it out, and I thought it was pretty good because they were doing computers and a console for 30 years already at that point. Probably have it down. And it sounded phenomenal. Like after I figured out how to actually patch a stereo channel, because it was kind of, they're a lot better now. But after I figured that out, got it. Cool. Let's do this. And basically that was it. I switched over to that. It was the workflow. And plus also, you already win with the name with the artist.
Right.
What do you got? What are you using it for a house? Oh, SSL. Oh, like what we use in the studio? Yeah. Pretty much same company.
Exactly.
So like you're okay, cool, great, you win, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, every console sounds great now, right? Like I love Digicos. Digicos are great. It's a very correctional response on the EQ, right? It's surgical. Take this out. Corporate gigs, I love that stuff. You know, I just chose SSL because it was there and it sounded great, and I wanted to impress the artist with something they knew.
Right.
So.
I mean that's huge, because like even we talked about it with like Stephen Marley, the Marley brothers, for a while. The only reason why we haven't made the jump is because they're just not readily available, and we're not always traveling with our own desk. Which was I mean, we're getting closer to that point now, especially with the Marley brothers, where we've been talking to Claire and stuff. Well, before everything kind of shut down, Claire was going to be handling our support, and so we're getting closer to that point. But it's that recognition, because Steven has a SSL duality in his studio. So when you say SSL, there's no conversation. It's just like absolutely. What's your favorite part of the desk, if you can pick one?
I mean, sounds good.
I use that question there.
Again, it's like it goes back to that system. Like, why is this your favorite PA? It's not because it should be because it sounds good.
Right.
Why is this your favorite console? Because it sounds good. Right. If it sounds good, 40 to 50% of your job is done.
Absolutely.
You don't need all the extra outboard gear and all that stuff. And it's coming from a band that does clubs right after shows or does warm up stuff in clubs. I can't have a giant or 3 giant refrigerator racks of outboard gear.
Right.
I mean, I could, but I'd be breaking my back like every week just bringing it into these little tiny clubs that we love to play, which are great shows. So I picked that thing. I think the only outboard gear I have on that is a couple of Bukowskis, just because those reverbs sound great. And I just got another Fusions. I'm going to have 2 SSL Fusions.
Nice.
So, and a Wendell, but that's my secret. If you don't know what it is, figure it out.
It's like it's like when they flash you in Men in Black, so it like wipes your memory.
Yeah.
I said that. Flash. What are you using the Fusions for specifically?
I have one on the left-right. The thing I like it with the left-right, it adds a little bit of that dirt. Yeah. Although that tube function, the drive function, is a very noisy circuit. Just throwing it out there, SSL. If anyone's listening to it, it's still great. The thing I like about it is the H comp. They have a high frequency comp on there, so especially with drivers that have it's high end, you can kind of mellow that out. And the second one, I'm going to actually use it on drums, because I actually do have a distortion on the kick, snare, and hat that I usually mix a little bit. Because if you listen to listening to albums, because you should be listening to albums of the artists and not just and ask what they use on the albums rather than, oh, I'm going to use this plugin because it sounds good. Well, did they use that on the album?
Right.
You know, like if not, don't use it.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
you listen to some of the old Killer stuff, and like there's definitely some dirt, and you listen to a lot of the old Motown stuff and just everything else they listen to, like all the old '80s Britpop electronic stuff that they listen to, like Depeche Mode, Kraftwerk, which is not British, I know, but everything else. Pet Shop Boys. There's a little bit of dirt on those drums.
Right.
So
That's cool,
I'm gonna start using that on the drums.
Yeah, I've been again, Corona kind of interrupted everything we've been, but I was actually in the process of just about to pick up a Fusion for my left and right as well with Magic. What I like about it is you can, without getting into too much tuning, when you're on different PAs and stuff, you can sort of tame or expand certain parts of your left and right as you go from PA to PA, you know what I mean? So I actually talked to Tom Wood, front of house for Sean Mendez. He had one out in Singapore when I met up with them there, and it was pretty cool. Like, yeah, we had a long discussion about it. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not fortunate to get like a Laker or have some type of like precise tuning thing, just having that on the front end,
right,
or on the ass end, excuse me, is good. I mean, even they had that Velvet EQ, which is very, very, very simple, but it's the same thing. Like I was talking about. Oh shit, there's a lot of 250. Great, 250 down.
Right.
It's a little brittle. Okay, I'm just gonna compress a little bit of the high end.
Right.
You know,
right.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I like about it, man. They really put some thought into that. I got one question here that, and if anybody else has questions, definitely drop them real quick because we're running out of time. But the question here is, what's your go-to mics for drums, guitars, percussion, and vocals? So what are you using like on your drum kit typically?
Typically right now, I mean, so with the Killers, the only condenser mic that we have on stage is the Beta 91 inside the kick drum. Everything else is dynamic. Right. I was working on a DPA stuff to try to hear those stuff out. But the go-to stuff is all that Telefunken stuff. Like the M80 on the snare drum. Oh, it's amazing. It's great. Yeah. Those Heil mics, I got introduced to the Heil mics when I was filling in for monitors on Demi Lovato. Yeah. And like it just rejection off of those things.
Yeah, incredible.
Again, it could like a mic could sound good, but if it's killing you with the rejection, you get cymbals everywhere, then the mic doesn't sound good.
Exactly.
So optimize your compromise.
Right.
I love that line. So you got to think about it. It's like, okay, yeah, I want to get a Neumann 185 or a KSM 9 on the vocal.
Right.
Well, if you got a live band, like a very loud band behind you, and a soft singer, probably not going to be the best bet, and you're probably going to be fighting the whole entire
time. Exactly.
So you got to think about it. We've been using a lot of the Heil stuff on the guitars too. Again, just they sound great, and the rejection off of those things is amazing.
Right.
So it's just like when I took over, there was a lot of condensers on stage, and there were great sounding mics all over the place, but it was just like noise everywhere. You just solo
you can't tame that mix because it's just like it's running away from you down the road, as Veer likes to say. It's just running down the road because you can't keep it. So and that's what I want you guys to notice with this question. It's the approach. Again, you can't just, not because a mic is a great mic means it's a great mic for you. And as much as I'm pro DPA, we don't use DPA on shaggy stuff. I mean, we'd like to use a de facto capsule, but the fact is our drummer plays pretty hard. So, we're going to be getting drum bleed into that microphone all the time. So, we use a M80 right now, but before that, we were using the Heil RC35 capsule for a long time. And for those who, reggae or hip hop artists that kind of cup the mic sometimes, the Heil is great for that because the back end rejection off of that capsule, and the diaphragm actually sits so high in the capsule that even when they grip sort of around it, we just found it to give really great results. So I think definitely being able to pick the microphones that are good for that scenario, not just because they're a good microphone, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's I mean, it's going to sound really weird. You don't wear the same underwear on a new date, right? Just because something worked really well on the artist before that you work with might not work with the next artist.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Every time I'm at a festival and I'm listening, I try to, like, when I'm at the festival, we're not going back to the hotel and we're just sit there in the buses. I try to go and listen to every single act, at least one or two songs, just to see how it's going on.
Right.
And half the time, I'm just like, man, that's really clean. And I'm looking on stage, and they're all in ears, no amps on stage and everything else. Like, cool. That's when you can start experimenting on stuff, because all you have is a drummer and a vocal. Yeah, sure. Try to experiment.
Absolutely.
Stuff. I don't have that luxury,
right?
Because it's so loud on stage and everyone's on wedges and everything else. Like, it's funny because I constantly joke. It's like, why am I always getting the acts that have wedges? Like, it's just it just bleed everywhere, and you just got to try to make your, try to litigate all the bullshit that's happening. Excuse my French.
Right. Yeah. So. And again, you mentioned it earlier, and it's really cleaning up that source. The source is not just the individual instruments, but the entire stage. You got to look at that entire stage as one giant piece of the pizza, right? That's really gonna make or break the quality at the end. So, man, that's incredible.
Optimize your compromise.
Exactly.
Again, optimize your compromise.
Man,
like,
that's huge. I'm gonna write that down.
If you want to have a really, really good, like, you want to use a U87 as a front vocal mic, all right, well, you got to compromise somewhere else then.
Right.
Or you can, if you suck it up and be like, all right, I use this vocal mic use a Heil on the mic. Maybe I can use a better microphone on a guitar or something like that, right? Or if I use this Heil, I can get more volume out of it. So if the management's bitching about it not being loud enough, well, there's your compromise.
Right.
Right.
So. Absolutely. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time and sharing so much nuggets. I think for anybody watching, they're definitely going to be able to walk away from this and go, man, I learned so much. I always learn. Every time we get a chance to get together, I learn a ton from you, and it's always great conversation, so I appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship.
Anytime. Yeah, hit me up anytime, man.
And I'm looking forward to when you get back out on the road and we can connect again, and hopefully in Toronto, whenever you come here, we get a chance to hang out. But thank you so much.
I'll go take a restroom break. You can just sit on the console for a song or two.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody, for joining. If you haven't already done so, check out the website below, jasonreynoldsproaudio.com. Check out patreon.com/jasonreynoldsproaudio. We got a masterclass coming up on Tuesday, so now would be a great time for you to go subscribe. And join us tomorrow. Danny Munoz, another SSL guy, is going to be on with us tomorrow. So it's like SSL week. So,
I love it.
So definitely join us tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you, Kenny. Stay safe and healthy, man, and we'll talk soon.